In the earlier days of PicturesToExe, the software was solely created for still images. Later, I think it was around PicturesToExe 5, where we could begin to introduce video. Over the years, I will admit that I've not been a great fan of using video mixed with still images in a slideshow. I've never been entirely happy with the quality of the video, not in every case, but many of the times when I've wished to use video, it doesn't match the still images from a quality point of view, contrast and colour. Now, video photography suffers exactly the same problems as still photography does. After all, most of the time, we're even using the same camera to shoot the video as we are the still images. So if we're out shooting under dull conditions, such as those we can see here, then it stands to reason that the image is going to be lacking in contrast and colour. With still images, we've always been able to deal with that, going back to our JPEG days when we used adjustment layers, levels, curves, colour and contrast. As time moved on, we gained the ability to shoot raw images, which in my view seemed to broaden the gap between my still images and any video I was considering using. Now, of course, we do have quite a bit of scope within Photoshop Creative Cloud to be able to open up our video into the motion section and make quite a degree of change to the colour, contrast and other aspects of the video too, and we're going to demonstrate that through the remainder of the videos in this set. But of course we also now have the opportunity within PicturesToExe to do colour correction, which is going to help a great deal, and I've just singled out a small piece of video here to demonstrate what I mean. Now, I have a short piece of video here that I've already converted in PicturesToExe. I'd like to open that up into the Objects and Animation screen. Going to the Animation tab, this is what I'm interested in, Color Correction. Now, we can use this in two ways I'm going to suggest. One of them is a corrective way, which is more what I want to demonstrate here, but there's also a creative approach too. For example, if we wanted to make this a monochrome, then that's definitely creative. If we wanted to move from a monochrome to a sepia, that's creative. But what I want to do here is to try to improve the contrast and colour. If I wanted to make creative changes to the video, then I'm almost certain to want a second keyframe, because I may want to take the image from colour to sepia, from black and white to colour. Those are the sorts of things I had in mind when I'm thinking creative. But if we're going to correct the video, then really all we need is the one keyframe, because if we're going to correct it at the starting keyframe, we're going to want those corrections to remain for the number of seconds the video runs. I think one of the most positive things about the colour correction tools here is that we can always drop back in and change them if we change our mind a little bit later. But let's think about what we want to do here. Let's go and add a filter. If we were working on a still image, a JPEG image in Photoshop, we would probably turn to levels. So we've got levels here. We can select that. Unfortunately, we don't see a little histogram, a diagram of the histogram, which would be useful, but maybe in the future PicturesToExe will even show us that. But all we need to do is really just follow our nose, so to speak. If we just click on the back point, you can see the double-headed arrow, which enables me to change this. So that's the black point. I can double click and reset this at any time. So I'm going to go to the white point first, and you can see I can just brighten up the image a bit, move the black point to the right, maybe a little bit of mid-tone to just brighten it up a bit more, and already I've made quite a considerable difference to this piece of video. And maybe a nice way to show that is to come out of the Objects and Animation screen and drag the original piece of video into place and looking at the mini player I can just jump between the two, and there's quite a considerable difference there. But going back into the adjusted version of the video in the objects and animation screen, the other great thing about color correction is we can add one color correction to another. So if I wished to just tuck away the levels just to tidy this up a little bit, I can go back to the add filter and I can say, well, let's add a bit of saturation as well. Let me just drag that down a bit. There we've got the hue and the saturation here, so I can just drag a little bit to the right, and straight away I've put a nice bit of saturation into the image. The video, we can go too far of course, so we've got to be careful, but just double click any of these and they'll be reset. And don't forget, it may even be more comfortable to just place your cursor in there and use something like the up arrow to just nudge the value upwards until you feel you've gone a bit too far. Then you can just back off a little bit and say, well, that looks okay to me. Normally the hue would be considered a corrective tool, so sometimes we may want to use the same method. Here I'm going the wrong way and I'm making more of the magenta colour. But if I just hold the key I can go the other way, so if I wanted to take a little bit of magenta out I can do that too. Let's close down the objects and animation screen and again just jump between the two, and we've made considerable improvements in that section of video. Now putting the cursor back to the original, let me just press play and we can just watch those two short clips. I think this kangaroo must have been drunk. He almost fell over and frightened himself and ran away, but what we're interested in is the difference in the contrast and colour. Much better in the second version.